Hello and welcome back to She Builds with AI. Today I'm joined by someone who has been working at the intersection of AI, developer tools, and complex technology systems long before the current AI wave began. Shanea Leven has spent more than 15 years building products and platforms across companies including Google, eBay, Cloudflare, and Docker. She later founded CodeSee, a platform designed to help developers understand complex code bases, which was acquired by GitKraken in 2024. After taking some time away from startup life, she decided to build again. Today, Shanea is the co-founder and CEO of Empromptu AI, where she and her team are tackling one of the biggest challenges in enterprise AI: how to move from an impressive prototype to a reliable production system that companies can trust, govern, and ultimately own. Empromptu is built around a powerful idea. Companies should not simply rent intelligence indefinitely from third-party platforms such as OpenAI or Anthropic. The applications they build, the expert feedback they collect, and the knowledge they gather or they generate should contribute to an intelligent asset of their own. In this conversation, we'll explore what most companies are still missing when they build with AI, why the real challenge often begins after the demo. We also talk about data and model ownership, what they actually mean, and what Shanea learned from returning to entrepreneurship for a second time. Shanea, I'm so happy to have you on the show. Welcome to She Builds with AI.
Thank you so much for having me.
So nice that you could join, Shanea. So lovely to have you here. Shanea, you've worked across Google, eBay, Cloudflare, and Docker before founding CodeSee and now Empromptu AI.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, which of those experiences most strongly shaped the problem you are solving today?
I would say all of them. I think as you build companies, as you go throughout your world, as you see problems, you start to gather this intuition, and you're actually able to understand the depth. When you start to get deep in an industry, you start to get deep with customers, or you start to get really deep in living your life. You start to see problems everywhere. I will say that each one of the experiences that I've had has probably uniquely shaped my perspective. Google has taught me, just basically changed my whole personality. And then I think eBay really taught me about the depths and technical abilities of, machine learning. And Cloudflare really inspired me to think about the book, The Innovator's Dilemma. They're really big into that. And Docker was just one of those transformative experiences that you see where if you are a developer, you use Docker, or if you aren't, you probably don't know that you're using it or all the products are. And so I think that you take a little bit over time.
Yeah.
As you do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You collect as you go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. Really cool. And eventually those experiences just led you into entrepreneurship eventually. And you founded for the first time. You founded CodeSee. CodeSee was acquired by GitKraken in 2024. And afterwards you took some time away from startup life. What did building and exiting of your first company teach you? And what ultimately made you decide to become a founder again a second time?
So I think when you are building a company, you are mostly serving a group of people with solving some problem. And when you are going through an acquisition process, or you're going through a business process, or you're actually not selling. You are sort of selling the product, but you're also actually, the company in and of itself is another sales process in and of itself. And that taught me a lot. It taught me how to think about your business from a very different perspective, from the perspective of an acquirer, of the level of asset that you're selling. If you can think about your startup is, to some people, an asset class, just like you were buying a stock. or if you were buying a bond or a treasury note. And so thinking about that from a very different perspective, from an investor perspective, as I think about buying companies today, or if I think about, how all of my customers are building companies today and how they are thinking about potentially selling their company to other people and what the infrastructure is required. I think that taught me a lot, and to really start to think about the world as, well, these are just a bunch of asset classes and you're buying and selling and trading them. And it's a really fascinating thing to think and learn about.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
really have to go into the depth of your own company, right? To understand what do investors want to see. And that's just a whole different way of thinking, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that investors and acquirers are all using a different language, right? They're using a very different frame of reference and perspective that as a founder, you may not get access to as you're not, as you're going through your day to day trying to serve your buyers, whether you are in, consumer or you're in developer tools or you're in whatever industry you're in or you're in healthcare. There's a very different mindset.
It's definitely super exciting. Shanea, one of the things you're approaching very deliberately with Impromptu is the gap between creativity or creating an exciting AI demo, and building something that really works in practice. Impromptu helps companies move from promising AI prototypes to reliable production systems. What usually changes or starts to break when an AI application enters the real world? And what does it mean to think of AI as a complete system rather than just a feature?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we can talk about this forever, right? So what most people are doing today, if they're, experimenting with Claude or ChatGPT, which are also great tools, they are likely doing something. They're using what we call a chatbot that uses what's called a frontier model, right? And when you are building simple things, landing pages, things that are static, if you're building a SaaS app, if you're building there are a lot of very important SaaS apps out there today.
Yeah.
Those are called deterministic systems, meaning that the inputs that you put in, so if you have a name field, you type your name into a website, it's always going to be text, right? You're going to get the same text out, right? You're going to get the same input gets the same output sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're building, not when you are using AI to build a static website, when you're actually building AI, like
Yeah.
a thing that thinks and learns and uses the model, you can put an infinite amount of inputs in and get an infinite amount of outputs out. That requires very different tools. It requires very different systems. It requires different guardrails. You have to be very, very explicit. It requires different skills than we used during the SaaS era. And so the things that you need today to be able to build an intelligent actual AI system is clean data. You need an actual wrapper around the actual interface, right? A front end, like thing that shows up on the screen, a back end, database to house all things. You need the actual model, but you also need things like guardrails, and you need monitoring solutions that work differently than eras of the past. And typically what people do is they build all of those things and they try to interconnect like 12 different tools. But what is better is that all of those tools need to fit together to self-learn, because they're always moving and using those parts together. So that is a key difference between what we do and what you might try to do on your own, which is, stitch together 12 different companies' tools that may or may not integrate together to give you a not high quality result. And so those are just some of the things to think about. But if you are building an actual intelligent application, the world is your oyster, right? You have this superpower, and it's not hard to learn. It will take some effort, but it is absolutely possible.
Super cool. Awesome. Yeah. And also at the same time right now, it has never been easier to build something that looks and feels like a working AI application, right? Talking about vibe coding, talking about rapid AI development. Those tools have made it possible to build applications incredibly quickly. Where do you see their greatest value, and where do they reach their limits in an enterprise environment?
this moment, I actually see no limit, honestly. I think that with the right tooling, with the right systems, there are other solutions for, you don't need to have AI for every single thing. For example, a lot of people are using AI for certain things in enterprise cases when they could just use an if statement in code, right? Like that, you don't really need to do that, right?
So it needs
But
to be AI.
yeah, not everything needs coming from a builder, coming from someone who lives and breathes this stuff every day and who loves it, right? Not everything actually needs to be AI. There are trade-offs. And so I think but I don't think yet that there are limits. I will say that over time, what has been very interesting for me to experience is that right now with the models that exist, they are not good at creating something new, right? Creating new ideas, like capturing the human experience to be able to like create a product, to be creative in that way. They are really good at regurgitating things that already exist because that's what they are. They are fancy autocomplete tools. Like if you autocomplete something, that's what this is. It's a fancy autocomplete. So it's, if you give it something, it is very good at fancy auto completing that thing, not generating new tools. So I think there's a really human discernment, taste. People are going to continue to try to innovate in those tools, which I think will get better and increase the ability to, um, add to our lives and add to our society. However, so I don't see a limit, but right now that's where the biggest gap for me is.
Mm-hmm. Super, super interesting. Yeah. And one of the biggest questions, like once people start depending on an AI system is also, of course, whether its output is actually good enough. Talking about accuracy. Accuracy can mean very different things depending on whether we're talking about a shopping assistant, a financial decision, or, for example, a healthcare application, right? How should companies define, in your opinion, measure and continuously evaluate whether an AI system is accurate enough for production?
It's a great question. I think that you're absolutely right. Every task that you give to an AI within a larger framework, within a larger application, and those applications can be within a larger company, every agent that you build, every workflow that you build will have a different measure of what good looks like for that task. And that's one of the reasons why I said earlier today that thinking about guardrails and evaluations, which is how you define what good looks like, needs to be integral into the system. It cannot be an afterthought. It needs to be like, actually, oh, we need to define what good looks like and then work backwards from that goal. Right.
Indeed.
Right. So I think that, yeah, I think that all allows the human to use their domain knowledge, their subject matter expertise to define what that looks like. And everything is not going to be 100% today. They're just, particularly as the technology is new. And so that's where a concept called edge case detection comes in, where, you'll see this all over, where there's my most recent example I saw in self-driving cars, posted this on my LinkedIn, that
I have to
I live
check
on
that out.
yeah, I live on a one-way street. And then I started hearing like commotion outside my window. And I was like, what's going on? And I started to take a look and there's a Waymo that's horizontal on my one-way street. Why? Why? And then it's facing another Waymo. That is an edge case. That shouldn't happen. Why did that happen? Right.
Shouldn't.
And
Yeah.
so that edge case, you'll see this. I think self-driving cars are the best way to talk about the edge cases that you might see in AI. It's so
Mhm.
visible. We in San Francisco, we had citywide blackouts. Self-driving cars have probably never seen citywide blackouts. What does the AI do in that scenario if it hasn't been defined? Right. And that's how everyone should be thinking about defining what good looks like. And if there's an edge case that you haven't captured, that that is where you start to get hallucinations, where you start to get errors, where you start to think about, in the shopping case, is it buying a t-shirt that's cerulean or is it buying a t-shirt that's just baby blue? Do you know what I mean? Like, So those are the things that the creators of AI, you as the developer, should be thinking about to really get those high accuracy systems.
And also like to ideate different scenarios, different edge cases that should be considered
Exactly.
right from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And so as you're thinking about putting AI in multiple parts of your business or multiple parts of your life, your personal life, you should be considering or taking at least taking note in the beginning of like potential edge cases and working with your subject matter experts in those areas. So if you are, if you are a domain expert in AI, but you want to create an invoicing app in your enterprise for a supply chain, you should be working with the subject matter experts in that area to ensure that you define edge cases or you have that human discernment of what would I do as a human in this scenario so that you have the ability to encode that and then make sure that you have the infrastructure to be able to ensure that that actually gets applied.
Very, very interesting. Super cool. Shanea, you distinguish between a tenant economy and an asset economy in AI. Even when major model providers do not use business data for training by default, what questions around ownership, dependency, and long-term economics should companies still be asking?
I think they should be asking, yes, we know that there are some companies that that say that they're not using training data. However, we have seen recently in the prime example of Fable 5 that people outside the company have control over what happens with models today. And if you are building your company, your prime product generating, revenue generating products on these tools and you are dependent on that for revenue, but it's completely out of your control. Why? Why is it out of your control? Is there a way to at least have a backup, right? For thinking about business continuity, business reliability, what happens when, all of these things occur. And so those are there are ways to train your own custom models that are starting to skyrocket. We've started to hear in the news about open weight models, and open weight models traditionally have been pretty hard to fine tune, but now they aren't. And so that gives businesses a choice and optionality of, do we want to optimize for speed and use the frontier models, but there could come with risks, or start to train our own, which gives us business support, but also allows the companies to have at least a backup support for how they're thinking about things, and also
Understood.
potentially save some costs over time.
Yeah, that's always and a very important factor business-wise.
Absolutely.
Nice. Shanea, of course, owning more of the intelligence does not necessarily mean that every company should immediately build its own model. When should a company continue using third-party foundation models? And when does it start to make sense to train or own a custom model? And how can expert corrections, user interactions, and operational feedback improve that model over time?
So I think that if you are experimenting, if you're, using prototypes, if you are just getting your ideas going, absolutely use a frontier model. Get it out, get some feedback, iterate, figure out what the product's going to be, and all for that. And in the training conversation, I think that we have this picture of all of the things that we need to do this really hard task. And I think my job is so exciting because I get to dispel that myth that it's much harder than it needs to be. And it actually isn't. It doesn't have to be. So the way that people fine tune or train custom models is that they hire a lot of people to document their workflows. And then they take that training data, and that training data is then used to fine tune a model. But what we've learned is that in companies, particularly in enterprises, they already have people. They already have subject managers. They already have the infrastructure. They already have the workflow. right?
True.
So you don't need to hire outside people to make contrived workflows and pay millions of dollars to do that, to train a model, when you could just work with infrastructure that
Mhm.
in your company to capture and work with the subject matter experts that you already employ and be able in your actual workflow, in not contrived ones, real ones.
Yeah.
And so that actually gives you a higher level of accuracy. And that's really the mission of what we're trying to work on an impromptu is this doesn't actually need to be that hard. You keep building AI, you keep doing the things in your workflows that you were already going to do. Your employees get this excellent, amazing support so they can go off and do these higher, more strategic things, and things that are annoying, you don't have to do anymore. But if that is generating a valuable training data set that you would need to be able to train your own custom models. And all we do is support companies. It's a choice that they have, that they can capture it and then send that off to fine tune their own custom model.
I think that's also like a lot of like upskilling or like teaching, making companies understand the benefits, right, involved in your work, I suppose. Maybe they got the idea right from the start, that they don't have to like revolutionize their whole processes. They can just like
They don't.
integrate it into their processes, into their workflows, which is just such a huge relief for companies, right, to work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Amazing. Shanea Impromptu raised a relatively lean pre-seed round in a market known for a very large AI investment. Why did you choose that approach, and how has it shaped the way you build, prioritize, and make decisions?
So one of the biggest lessons in my last company was to prioritize go to market. And any technical builders today, or any, thinking about building a business, go to market is incredibly important. And I think giving yourself a tight knit group of people on your cap table, thinking about your business as an asset class, and ensuring that you are building an actual revenue generating business in a way that makes a ton of sense, and is efficient, is actually gives you a force multiplier. And so it really shifts your brain, right? In my last company, we raised a pretty good amount of money. And I think that that gives you some flexibility, but it doesn't teach you true business fundamentals, right? And I think a lot of the venture community today is doing awesome stuff. They're really trying to find the next, and they're really trying to find the next winners.
Yeah.
And I commend them for that. But raising a big round when you're not ready for it, right, can put up some very interesting trade-offs, right? And so will I say that I will never raise a big round in the future? Absolutely not. But at this moment, the constraints are very important for you to get right before you raise a big round, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You were talking about interesting trade-offs. Can you mention a few? What did you encounter?
So so this is getting a little bit, it's getting a little bit into venture speak, venture language, which I'm happy to talk about. But there's something called fund math. If you raise from a venture capitalist specifically, whose job it is to invest in this asset class called startups, right? They're not day traders, or they're not hedge fund managers. They're investing in startups. Their job, they have a boss called limited partners. Limited partners are going to give them more money to say, hey, you invest my money into startups. That venture capitalist job is to return funds to their limited partners, their LPs. And so the math works that if you raise from a mega fund like Andreessen Horowitz, or you raise from Sequoia or anything like that, they've raised, a multi-billion-dollar fund, and they are expected to return multi-billions to their investors. And the math works that only one in every 10 startups is going to be uber successful, and 9 are going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, if you don't set up your business as that one pillar that's going to try to return billions to your investors who can then return billions to their investors,
Mm.
right? Like that allows that sets up a really interesting dichotomy because let's say that there's something that's actually really good for society, for example, that may or may not actually return billions,
Mm.
right? So now so by making a smaller round, you're not actually yet expected to return multiple billions at that phase. So that's kind of the fund math that you have to think about. And if you think
Yeah.
like $2 million returns versus if you raise an initial $100 million returns, the kinds of, right, it's a huge difference, particularly at the seed round
Mhm.
where nothing has really been proven yet. You can, your options become incredibly limited on what you can do as a business because your investors are expecting you to get a return on the $100 million that you raised,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And so I think that it's a lot better for you to raise a little bit, really get that, really, if you're going to go the venture capital route, you absolutely do not have to go the venture capital route. You don't. Not every business is meant for venture capital. So and not every business is meant for investment either. And so if you don't understand that language of what you're trying to get, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
Mhm. Mhm. Super,
Yeah.
super interesting to get those insights for you, Shanea. Really cool. So it just keeps you more flexible. You can just like make your own decisions. You don't have to think about like making a lot of money, like making investors happy all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. You
Just
can have a very successful business without
yeah.
taking venture capital. You can still get investors. There are lots of different books and there's different systems on, how to get a business started without raising venture specifically. There are a lot of VCs on TikTok who also talk about this.
Mhm. I see. I see. Very, very cool. So advice to startups, rather do the lean pre-seed round. It gives you
I think
more
it's a
flex.
yeah, I think it's a timing thing, right? Like I will say
Awesome.
that
Of
will
course.
we
Of
will we
course.
raise a big round? Possibly, right? I think
Mhm.
it's very much a timing of like how are we thinking about things?
Yeah. Yeah. Makes
Yeah,
sense. Makes
yeah,
sense. Where your product at what stage it is in and how much more support it also needs
yeah,
financially speaking.
absolutely.
Nice. Shanea, as a second time founder and one of relatively few Black women building at the AI infrastructure layer, how have your experiences shaped the way you lead, raise capital, and establish credibility in the market?
I think that for myself, I am trying to help people understand that there are a lot of smart people in the world. There are a lot of smart people who can create ideas and the patterns that we have established for success can be different. And I think that for me, I think my opinion on how women lead has shifted from one company to another. And I think that just happens with time and age as well, right? I think
Great.
I think in my first company, there's a lot of, whether this is good or bad, I think that there's a lot of forces that if a woman messes up, right, then it's a very, very big deal. In the media and all of those things, I saw a lot of that, like with the Away founders and with like the Kimberly Bryant from like Black Girls Code during like the 2020 era. I think that there was a lot of stories around that. And I think I very much over rotated on being liked
Yeah.
as CEO. And I think that if you, as a woman of color, there, if you're trying to build a business, if you're going to lead, I think that there is just going to be people who don't like you. It just kind of, or they're going to think differently than you and they're going to question your decisions, period, just in general. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think that over time, you just kind of have to let that go because it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And you still are responsible for your employees. You're still responsible for your customers. You're still responsible for your investors, whether or not people agree with the decisions that you're making for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And I think as a leader, not questioning my own intuition was really, really one of the biggest learnings for me and that I personally work on every day.
Mm,
Right. I think in my first company, I relied a lot on people around me to kind of validate if my thinking was correct.
mhm.
And I think that now I don't have. I think that it has to come from
Yeah,
my,
yeah.
right. And I think that a lot of women, question their own decisions. And the secret is that nobody knows what they're doing. That's really the secret. And I've talked to, thousands of founders, thousands, male founders, female founders. I mean, multi-time founders. No one really knows what they're doing. And that gives me a lot of comfort.
Is it like the mantra you're repeating in
Yeah,
your?
I think that, and I think that it's really empowering, right? Because particularly as you go into a new technology, right? Or
Yeah,
you're entering in a space, particularly in AI, where it seems on the surface on LinkedIn, on Twitter or Reddit that everybody's like, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that and you should be blah, 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 blah.
exactly.
And you're behind. Like the secret is none of them know what they're doing. They're just doing it for content, which is great, right? That's the secret. And so I think if
Mm,
you are, I'm talking to CEOs, CIOs of huge companies that are like, how do tokens work, right? I think the other secret is they are not smarter than you. And when you're building these systems, right? And your domain expertise is relevant and important. And it's just a new technology that you wrap around your hard earned effort.
yeah.
And I think that gives me a lot of comfort.
Yeah, super, super interesting. Like, do you have a tip how to block out all the noise on LinkedIn or whatever is going on and just stay in lane, stay in focus, just stay in your bubble, that the world that you're building in?
Yeah, I think, well, I am in prime bubble territory. So I need to keep up with all of the things. But I think but I do have a set period of time in my day where I leave my phone at home and walk my dog. And that's my like block out the world before I have to come back and be inundated with messages. And so I think that you can set up structures in your system or in your day, right? For being able to discern and also set up and community is really also important for this. Like I try to have people around me to be like, what is did I misunderstand what you're talking about? This seems like fake. This seems like actually this is just marketing copy, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
And is like technologically, are they saying what I think that they're saying? And so I think listening to creators that you really trust to kind of talk through the detail or picking only a couple to listen to and kind of blocking everyone out, being like, if this person isn't talking about the technical depth or showing you the value of how it works. A lot of us talk about trends, which is very important for keeping our audiences informed. But, the detail is important. They're not publishing papers or they're not, publishing their benchmarks. Like we have papers and research papers, things that we do publish on our website for how things actually work under the hood. And those are the sorts of sources that you should be trusting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That makes sense. Being selective with the people you listen to, being selective with the sources you're looking into. That's a really, really good tip. Nice. Shanea, I'd love to close by looking ahead. When you look 3 to 5 years into the future, like somewhere around 2030, which parts of enterprise AI do you expect become commodities? And where do you believe lasting competitive advantage will remain?
I definitely think that the data, the subject matter experts that you hire and the knowledge, the domain knowledge and expertise is going to be your competitive advantage. If you are giving that away to others, whether or not they're using it, they still might be getting ideas from it, right? So you can't stop people's ideas from happening. I think that is that the way that you do things, the brand that you have, the trust that you have with people is going to ensure that your business stays afloat. The audience that you build is going to, cutting through the noise right now is really, really hard to do. So if you're building a brand and an audience, that's also going to probably stay.
Mm.
I will say that at any point, all of this could change, right? But I will say that AI is not going away. I will say that it's going to get cheaper, and it's too far, right? We've been able to do too many things in our enterprises with it that will not slow down. And so I think the real value is a small business owner or a mid-market company. Enterprises are absolutely going to have the ability to get these systems in place.
Mhm.
I think that there's opportunities everywhere, right? I think product ideas and subject matter expertise that it's delivering and quality experience in AI, that's going to continue as well.
Very interesting. Super exciting vision of the future. Cool. Shanea, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed being on the show.
I did. It was lovely. Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun.
So happy. Amazing. What I really appreciated about this conversation is that you took us beyond the excitement of what AI can demonstrate and into the much harder questions of what it actually takes to make AI work in the real world. The distinction between renting intelligence and building an asset of your own is such an important one. Because companies are not only choosing models or vendors today, they are making long-term decisions about who owns their knowledge, who controls their costs, and how much independence they will have in the future. I also really appreciate how openly you shared your experience of building for the second time, the lessons you carried forward from CodeSee, and the choices you are making differently with Empromptu. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your perspective, and your journey with us. It was genuinely wonderful having you on the show. And to everyone listening, thank you for being here. You can find Shanea and learn more about Empromptu through the links in the show notes. And if this conversation made you think differently about how your company is building with AI, please share the episode with someone who should be part of this conversation. Until next time, stay visible, build boldly, and help shape technology in a way that works for all of us.